Greetings, friends. Welcome to Soul Empowerment, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For. Also, one of the co-authors of the Wellness Universe best-selling series, The Complete Guide to Self-Care. And we've got a fourth volume coming out here shortly. It's going to be published on December, I believe the launch date, they're shooting for December 2nd. But I think our official launch is going to be somewhere around December 7th. So that's pretty exciting. That's going to be the fourth book that I've been involved in. And this one is called 25 Tools for Goddesses. So you might wonder, well, what the hell am I doing writing a book for that? Well, the truth is, when I first saw Anna producing these books, I thought, this is a great idea. And I love Anna. I love the Wellness Universe. And I said to her, I'm going to be involved in every single book. And then she came out with this title, 25 Tools for Goddesses. And I kind of went, wait a minute. What do you want me to do here? So, yeah, I found a way of writing a chapter on what I call shadow spotting. And hopefully you'll pick up a copy of that when it comes available. And there's going to be a lot of good stuff in there, I can tell you. This is a really juicy book. I like that. So anyway, and welcome to my co-host, Nancy Stevens. Nancy, go ahead and just introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Nancy Stevens, and I am a self-care specialist. I'm a author as well. In fact, I, along with David, was a featured author in the very first Wellness Universe self-care book, and I'm really excited to also be a co-author in this upcoming Wellness Universe book. Really, it is an excellent book. Definitely you want to get in on the action. I am a member of the Wellness Universe with you, David, and when I'm not blogging or authoring or presenting, I also am co-owner of a vegan, sustainable, cruelty-free skincare brand called upliftcleanbeauty.com, and we are a skincare products company. So all the work that I get to do, from skincare to being a co-host with David, kind of is all in alignment with healthy well-being, and that's me, and that's you.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. And today our topic is called When Life Throws Curveballs. And I remember when we were having our conversation about this, when the topic came up, I thought this is perfect. I mean, what kind of life what would life be like actually if we didn't have curveballs? Can you imagine how boring it would be? But sometimes the curveballs are not as pleasant or even, I don't know, sometimes they can be damn painful if you get right down to it. So the question that we're asking ourselves today is, how do we deal? How do we show up? How do we deal with these curveballs when they arrive? Is there a way to prepare for them in advance? And various questions like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So I'm so glad you're watching either the live or the recording, and let's just see where this goes. So Nancy, what comes up for you first? What's the first thing that comes up for you when we talk about the idea of life throwing curveballs?
Hide, dodge it. No.
Right.
Run for cover. Initially, I would say the word curveball has more of an implication of needing to be caught off guard or take shelter or hunker down. I don't necessarily have an association as much as I would like to with a curveball being something that you catch. It's my turn. So that kind of comes up like, I better really be maybe defensive or watch my back, or take a different stance of being really mindful of offensive or defensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. The idea of how do I react to a curveball? Obviously, the term curveball is a metaphor that comes from baseball, primarily U.S. baseball, and I actually chose an image which shows a pitcher throwing a curveball directly towards you, being the person looking at the camera. And I was thinking of it from the perspective of being the batter, not so much the catcher. I was standing there in the batter's box thinking, oh my God, I got to hit this thing, and I got to get a home run, and I got to do this. And I noticed all those thoughts popping up in my head when I heard that. So you're right. When a curveball comes in life, it's obviously called that because we're not expecting it.
Yeah.
It's something that is kind of surprising. It catches us off guard. And so the question is, can we stay grounded? Can we stay really centered in the truth of who we really are as whatever is happening is happening? So, yeah.
Yep. Can we stay grounded and centered in the midst of the curveball, whether it's maybe even one that we discussed earlier? It can be one that's might be, we know it's looming on the horizon. We are, quote, anticipating it, or if one just literally gets launched out of nowhere. Definitely lots of fertile ground for really learning more about ourselves based on how we responded or reacted, or what we said or did in the instance when the curveball met us in our life. And that definitely I can speak into this. I had a major life curveball last year, and once I initially was initially shaken, but I think in the days preceding that, I was able to, because of the work we've done, to find my center and then begin to move into what was the meaning of that curveball. What was I meant to learn?
Right. Well, can you describe just briefly what that curveball was, just so people have an understanding of what you're talking about?
Well, I will share. It was, like I said, it definitely was a curveball. We knew something was wrong with our adult son, but we weren't quite sure of the scope of it. Unfortunately, he had an overdose, a drug overdose, so it was pretty serious. I think we had been anticipating something, but you just with that, you don't really want to put it out there is if and when. So when it happened, I wasn't like completely shocked and surprised, but I was very much taken aback. And that just brought up all kinds of, some negative connotations. Why didn't we see this? Where was I? How come, if only, why, da, da, da.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, with the work I've been doing, I was able to find some grounding in that and see what was meant to be learned from that versus just writing it off as the worst event ever, or hiding and denying it or not wanting to talk about it. But yeah, so that was definitely a curveball.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I heard you say that a big part of what came up for you had to do with your own criticisms or judgments of your own actions and how you were showing up. I've experienced much the same thing in my own life, so I can definitely resonate with that. I'm not reacting properly. I'm losing control. That's a big one for me. I'm losing control. The world, I cannot control the world, and therefore I'm a failure, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can resonate with what you're saying, and that can be painful to have to deal with those thoughts, even if you have done a lot of personal growth work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe that's the essence as we're discussing this. Maybe you can chime in too, Tracy, if you've had any curveballs in your life and how you initially saw them or responded. But I think also how we view a curveball, as you and I talked in previous episode, is we put our own story. We view it through the lens of our own personal story, maybe how we've gone through things in the recent past that color that curveball, making it making it be larger than life or worst case scenario, and we give it more weight than it sometimes deserves, or we bring it to life in an all different way.
Well, I'm sure glad you brought that up, because I think you're absolutely right. The truth is, in my experience anyway, our stories, our filters impact pretty much everything that happens in our life, whether it's a curveball or not. And certainly when we're under stress, the impact of our filters becomes even stronger. So, if we have certain belief systems, then we are going to frame the event, the circumstance within the context of that set of previous experiences. And it's pretty interesting how that happens. And so this notion of trying to stay centered and grounded seems like a foreign notion, especially when the situation is happening,
Yes. Yeah, it does. And I guess to back up a little step further is when life comes at us with the unexpected or expected, I think also to give yourself permission to sit in that for a moment, not to immediately pull out and pull away and I've got to get back to my safe space, to sit in, to give yourself permission to sit in whatever that emotion or feeling or response that comes up. Let that soak in, and then maybe once you've done that, then to begin to move from that. I think that's important. It's important to sit in it, but it's also important not to stay in it, so to speak. Right?
Right. Sure. I like that. Yeah. Reminding ourselves that it's okay to be in whatever situation we're in right now, because whatever situation we're in is going to pass. And we will get some gift out of this if we can keep that in our mind, rather than, oh my God, everything's falling apart around me and this and that and the other thing. Rather than catastrophizing the situation, if we can try and stay centered in the truth of who we really are as divine, magnificent, unlimited spiritual beings of light and love, then we can perhaps be more, serene, I guess is the word I want to say. Because I think of it, as you were describing it, I think of standing in it as like there's this storm swirling all around me, and I'm in the center of the storm. I am like the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
And I can stay calm in that central place. Things can go crazy around me, and I can still be okay. And that's the important thing for us to remember.
Yes, that is, that definitely is an important thing to remember. And there's also some pretty major things that can happen that I don't know if I can speak to that. Like if you're involved in just an act of violence, I can't speak to that. But that would definitely be a major curveball. But I believe even in that, like if you are, there's so much going on in the world. If you are caught off guard in an act of violence, that's a whole nother level. Right. But I believe that you could still process and come to a place where you could refine your center, maybe needing more help and guidance with that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that we're not all Jesus, so we can't all just turn the other cheek when somebody attacks us. Maybe with some more learning and more elevated consciousness, we can do that. But I can imagine that if somebody was coming and attacking me, I would just go into instant self-defense mode. And I wouldn't be thinking too much about the incident while it was happening in that case. I would be more likely to be, trying to protect this body from being damaged or destroyed. And it wouldn't be until afterwards, as I look back on the situation, that I might come to some question about whether I could have done things differently. But that's a really good point. And when things are really violent, well, don't make yourself wrong because you reacted and maybe even returned violence in order to protect yourself. That's making yourself wrong about that certainly isn't going to help the situation at all. Right? So the idea, I believe, is simply to, first of all, be aware as much as possible of what's going on, And secondly, to accept it as it is, without all your judgments and stories and filters and everything else that's going on. If you can do that much, even after the incident has passed, what you're doing is you're giving yourself now permission to learn from whatever gifts or whatever might have come from that incident. You can learn it. And anything you learn is a positive thing for you. That's the way I look at it. So even the most violent, unpleasant event happening to you may have some kind of a gift for you on the other side that you can't see right now. And it's not going to be until you can bring yourself back to center, bring yourself back to who you really are, that you're going to be able to see that gift for what it is. And that's where I think the importance comes in.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the midst of catching the curveball or the curveball tapping you, you're maybe working to stay afloat. Or when we found our son, it was just in the moment, attending to the needs that he needed at that moment. Not really, I don't think I was really processing anything. And then when it began to end, then I was like, you could feel the self-talk starting to dial in. And I had to process that, the self-talk. Then I was able to pull back and say, okay, who am I in this? What is meant to be yielded from this that can bear beautiful fruit, serving me and the world later on? And then that's another aspect of a curveball. Of course, we want to take it personally, right? It happened to us or at us or in our group, whatever that is. And so, of course, we're going to catch it. For me, why me? Defensive, angry, or it's, and of course it's personal. However, perhaps we were meant to have that happen, and it's hard. You can't see that in the moment necessarily. For us to be able to heal another person or to give support or perspective because we were able to go through that now we have the ability to stand with somebody else, a close friend, close family member, coworker who's going through something from our perspective to help them. So as we seek to gather and learn from the fallout or the aftermath of a curveball, then we now have that much more in our toolbox, so to speak, to show up and hold space for others.
That's beautiful. I was thinking one of the most significant curveballs that hit me in the recent past was the car accident that I had in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, what happened there was, basically I fell asleep while driving on the freeway. And it was one of those things where I just kind of dropped unconscious temporarily. And, I'm sure that everybody's had the experience of kind of feeling that idea of drifting off while you're driving and then kind of jerking yourself awake. Well, the jerking part didn't happen for me that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next thing I know, I'm hearing all this scratching sound of the bushes as the car is going through these bushes. And I'm having this like almost out of body experience where I hear this voice telling me to relax. I mean, it's a loud voice. And so what happens is, it's like everything is slowed down dramatically. And I have this idea in my head, well, I guess I could fight the wheel and see what happens, but I can't see where I'm going anyway. So, I might as well just relax and enjoy the ride. Almost had that kind of whole thought sequence going through my head. And so I did, and then just let things happen. And what happened is my car came to rest in the bush. And when I stood up and looked outside, and I had to climb out through the sunroof, I turned around and I looked, I saw these two big oak trees behind me. And they couldn't have been more than, 6 feet apart, something like that. Excuse me. And on both of these trees, there was like an 18-inch strip where the bark had been peeled away on the inside, both of them. So my car had traveled in between these two oaks And in that moment, I mean, I just started shuddering with tears. I mean, I thought, oh my God, I came this close
Yeah.
to being dead. And
Wow.
what came to me in that moment was, you're supposed to be here. You're
Ooh.
supposed to be here, but you
Mhm.
better wake up.
Mm.
That was the kind of message that came to me. So yeah, I could have had all kinds of stories about, oh, I should never have fallen asleep. This whole thing was my fault. All these, but you really, none of that happened. I was so blessed to still
Mhm.
be alive and so aware of the fact that I had some kind of message to deliver, that I may not have gotten to that level of awareness had that accident not happened.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
see
because
that?
you could have been injured as well, and you weren't. So that's,
Yeah. I
gosh,
think I had a minor bruise on my left hand. I don't
wow.
know. I hit something, or my finger got bent back, or something like that. I don't know what happened.
No.
But nothing broken. Outside of that, there was no damage to my body.
Mm.
The car was totaled. Yeah, and but anyway, that's not. I mean, I'm not saying this to be sensationalist or anything. I'm just saying that when we go through the situations that seem like curveballs to us, there's almost always a gift in the experience.
Mhm.
But we have to raise our vibration, raise our level of awareness to the point where we can look at it impassionately, or dispassionately, I guess is the right word, without any emotion tied to it, and say, so this happened in order for me to understand this. Was
Mhm.
there any other way for me to understand this? Well, maybe there was, but maybe I wasn't paying attention. That's
Mhm.
what I thought about in my own car accident situation. I could have come to some realization that I have to wake up and that I have to start
Yeah.
delivering my message. I didn't have to go through an accident. But as I look back on previous experiences in my life, I realized I really wasn't listening. It was like these angels, or my inner soul, my inner voice, whatever, were talking to me, and I wasn't paying attention. And it wasn't until the accident happened that I said, "Oh, you really want me to pay attention?" So it was a very strange but a beautiful experience overall. Yes, I lost a car. Yes, it had an impact on my insurance. Yes, all those things happened. But I'm alive, and I am doing now what I really love to do, and I'm getting my message out there. That's what matters.
That just brings me to another. That's beautiful. I mean, the imagery of your car going through these massive oak trees in the center. I mean, that's a powerful message from, quote, these unexpected curveball of you falling asleep at the wheel, car going off, and if you any number, like you said, worst case scenario didn't happen. Like that was like a divine curveball for your awakening.
That's right.
The divine.
Ironically, ironically, I was on a curve of Highway 280. I was going around a left-hand curve when this happened. I fell asleep, and so obviously I continued off the thing rather than turning around. It's interesting, but now you talk about the divine intervention, and I have no doubt about that at all, because it was like it was a perfect arrow between two oak trees. If I had been half an inch on either side, that car would have been toast, and maybe I would have been toast too. But it
It,
didn't happen that way. It was. I'm still stunned by the experience today.
yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty epic. I had a curveball, but not on the epic scale as yours. I'm thinking about it. So I went on a family ski trip in 2020. Yes, 2020, a year that we all know. And of course, it was just a family ski trip. Nothing but furthest from my mind was that I was going to fall and break something, and that's exactly what happened. Our first full day on the slopes, I was proud of myself. I'm holding my own. I'm doing fine. And I remember we were getting ready to go to the bottom. I was underneath the ski lift, and I remember in my mind thinking, "Don't fall under the ski lift because that's whatever uncomfortable." And what did I do? I wiped out. and fell. But I didn't just fall, of course. I knew the minute I hit the ground that I broke something, and I was just like, oh, just that collective, why, why me? What? How come?
Right.
But I gave in to the fact that something had happened, and I received a lot of immediate help from that. And shortly thereafter, I was waiting. I had broken my shoulder. I had to wait a few days to have surgery, and I met with a good friend of mine. We were just talking about starting our business, and this is what I said, or we brought this up. I said, I know I broke my shoulder, didn't expect that. Who wants to be inconvenienced and in pain and have all of the unknowns? But I said, I'm wondering, what am I meant to learn and do? What did my shoulder break want me to learn and to do? I know it wasn't just a broken shoulder. So same thing, curveball out of nowhere showed up in my life, causing me pain and inconvenience. And that's what bubbled up in my mind. My friend and I, we were instinctively like, oh, well, let's work on this. And from there, we began to lay out different scenarios of what I was meant to learn and become more than my quote broken shoulder. I'll never forget that conversation. It really opened the door for me to work on and co-create our skincare line and move into deeper work of authoring books. So yes, different, not as dramatic as yours at all.
It's just as dramatic, and there's no point in comparing, really.
Yeah.
It was enough for you to do some introspection and come up with a powerful answer about what your life means. That's what was important, and you were willing to listen when it wasn't necessary for a high impact or epic experience. I wasn't willing, and that's why I needed the epic experience. That's what I'm saying. And that may be true for all of us. The universe really is trying to help us know the truth of who we really are, experience and express ourselves to the maximum extent possible so that we accomplish that part of our goal, and to help us fulfill our purpose that we may have decided on long before we were even physically born on this planet.
Yeah.
So the universe is doing that for us all the time. And sometimes it might seem like a little nudge, Sometimes you just meet a person on the street who says something to you to kind of kick you a little bit out of your complacency. Or maybe you'll see something on the side of a bus that just wakes you up to something new. Or maybe you'll hear a song or whatever. I mean, it can be any kind of almost an innocuous thing that only you are going to pay attention to. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. Now, those I wouldn't classify as curveballs. I would classify those as little nudges from the universe saying, hey, you're supposed to be doing this, that, and the other thing. Remember? And if you don't pay attention, then you get, bigger and bigger curveballs.
That is really fascinating. Yep, there's a lot more to the curveball than meets the eye, right? Than the scenario or the physical or the felt action or implication of a curveball. There is a lot. And how would you, so if you can back up a little bit, so for those that are just getting started on their journey of finding themselves, may not know, again, you may still be in the place of taking things at face value and labeling them as, I was really hurt, inconvenienced, angered, I can't believe this, upended. So they're giving a surface level label to what happened versus moving into the soil of compassion and looking for a deeper meaning. So how do you make that? How does somebody who's starting to become a little bit aware, but is still maybe more centered in the world of reacting or being defensive or, poor me thinking, how can somebody is it possible? And how does somebody start maybe to move that way a little bit?
Well, I think my answer to that is that, first of all, you have to become aware of your current situation. You
Mm-hmm.
have to become aware of it. Now, I can relate this back to my own experience. For the first 40 years of my life, I was devoted to the premise that I had to do what the entire world wanted me to do in order to meet with their approval.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, I also had to kind of deny the truth of who I really was and show up the way I thought they wanted me to show up. And to some extent, I was successful in that. To some extent, I was able to get some level of satisfaction and happiness, but it was pretty minimal. And more often than not, I started feeling resentful and angry. And I had people telling me, "Why are you so angry all the time? Why are you
Mm-hmm.
so resentful?" And I would respond, "I am not angry. Leave me alone." That was my typical response, uh, to be defensive and argumentative. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously that wasn't helping. But it wasn't until I was in my 40s and shortly after the passing of my mother that I had a wake-up call that made me finally realize just how unhappy I was and how angry and resentful I was being, and how that anger and resentment was starting to leak out
Mm-hmm.
and create a negative impact on the people I cared about the most, my 3 kids. And
Mm-hmm.
so until you have some kind of an awakening moment, you're probably going to continue behaving the way you behave right now because that's what you're used to.
Yeah.
And this is not to make you wrong, by the way. This
Mm-hmm.
is, we all do it. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you want to start moving and elevating your consciousness and doing the work necessary to bring yourself out of that way of thinking, well, you got to start with an awareness. You got to look at your life right now and saying, where am I and where do I want to go? That's
Mm-hmm.
really what it boils down to. And when you say, where am I? It's not just, well, I'm here. No, it's like, oh, I am in a life where I am unhappy. I am not doing what I truly want to do. I am responding to things that the rest of the world wants me to do. I have my kids that are just getting frustrated with me. All these things are true about my life right now. Well, okay. Is that the kind of life you want? If the
Mm-hmm.
answer is yes, then just keep doing what you're doing because you're obviously succeeding. But if the answer is no, or if there's some things you want to change, then start looking at, all right, then what really needs to change here? And at first, you're probably going to be just like the modern doctors of Western medicine. You're going to look at symptoms and you're going to try and put Band-Aids on the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, you're going to realize those Band-Aids aren't helping, and you're going to understand that, oh, I have to start looking deeper. I have to go below the surface level and start understanding what the root causes are. And that's when the work really comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called work for a reason. But it can be very rewarding and exciting and even joyful work if you come at it with the right attitude, that what I'm doing is I'm not really unleashing myself so much as I am discovering the truth of who I am, or remembering, if you like, the truth of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I do that, the more I continue that process of just growing a little bit and finding out something new about myself, growing a little bit, finding out something new about myself. The more I do that, the happier I become. It's amazing to me. So
Yeah.
that's
Brings you
my
back.
answer. And I know that's not the kind of answer that people want to hear. People want to hear, but I just want a 3-step program. Okay. Step
Well,
1, become aware of your life. Step 2, decide what you want to change or what you want to keep the same. And step 3, start enjoying and taking responsibility for the consequences of your choices. That's my answer. And it's not going to happen instantaneously. It's going to be a lifetime change.
mm-hmm. Definitely. It's definitely one little inkling at at a time that will bring you there. I think when I first discovered or became aware that I was always quick to react, defensive, easily frustrated, quick to anger, and I didn't like that. I was like, everyone else seems to be just fine and living their life, and here I am in the corner with a black cloud over my head. And
you and I must have been living a very similar life, I gotta say.
What?
You and I must have been living like parallel lives on some level.
Just had this little rain cloud, me, myself, and me. And again, I didn't have people coming up to me, or avoiding me because they're like, man, I don't want to be around you. You're horrible. But I guess I didn't, at that time, I didn't really have access, or I was too busy to really start to delve into all of the gurus and self-help teachers. But I think with little kids, I think we put on Oprah and I started to, there you go. Well, I had to start somewhere. Began to learn a little bit from the guests she had on her show. And that kind of that little bit gave me enough information to step one. Wow, why am I okay? Well, do I need to stay this way? Is this just who I am? Just going to always be unhappy or unfulfilled, or staying small. And again, I didn't have there wasn't loud knocks at the door, people stepping up to help me. In fact, we all have our own stuff to deal with. So everyone, know that as you're dealing with your stuff, so too is everyone else. So it was definitely a process, peeling back the onion, taking that first little timid, embarrassed look within me about, gosh, I don't want people to know I'm angry. That's not a good asset or an attribute. Who wants to raise your hand and say, hi, I'm Nancy and I'm angry,
Right.
Okay. So I had to just sit in the soil of my life at the time. And I became more, I guess, more aware of when I was feeling angry and what made me angry. And, I would take a step back and then something else would happen and I would blow up and it went on like that for a little bit, but then I started to bring in more self-help through yoga and life coaching, working with master coaches. So it was definitely a process, but it did start with me noticing that I was always acting the same way and not getting anywhere and feeling like life was passing me by. And is this how I wanted to be? Is this how I wanted my life to go? This unhappy person in the corner with a cloud over her head when everybody was off, picking daisies in the field. So, it's not done until it's done. I had a moment the other day. I don't know why, a little rumbling of anger or frustration came up, and I was very aware. I immediately caught it, and I had the tools to go process from a place of curiosity and love. Like, why am I feeling a little bit this way? Oh, okay. It's because of something in the past that bubbled up that I needed to just see and put to rest, try to make me safe. But it is fascinating though, the process of growing and becoming.
It's interesting. You were talking about how when you started out, you didn't want to be the one who said, hey, hi, I'm Nancy and I'm angry. It's interesting. I have a friend, her name is Joanne Roderman, and she's like, I don't know how old she is. She's close to 80 years old now, but she's just the sweetest lady. And she teaches about forgiveness and gratitude. And I remember she did a speech at a Messenger Summit thing, and she stood up on stage. She's kind of small. She's maybe only 5 feet tall, and she's a little bit stocky, but just this beautiful, beaming woman. She walked up and she said, hi, everybody. My name's Joanne, and I used to be a raging bitch. That's how she started her speech, and it was just awesome. She told her story about how she was and how she had developed into this, how she learned about forgiveness and gratitude, and it's changed her life.
Yeah.
And as she teaches, and as you and I both teach, just because you do the work doesn't mean you stop feeling those emotions. Doesn't mean that anger never happens in your body. It's just now that you know who you are and why you're here and all the rest of it, you become better equipped to deal with that emotion in a way that doesn't cause damage to anybody else. There's absolutely nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with sadness or fear. They all serve their purpose. The problem is when you allow your body to get out of control and do things that you regret later, like throwing dishes or worse, hurting somebody because you're feeling angry. And even just with words that are coming from a place of anger, that can be very hurtful too. So the idea is to allow the energy to pass through you in a healthy way. And if you need to move your body, great, go ahead and move it. Go on outside and jump up and down and scream, or grab an axe handle and beat the crap out of a rock or something like that. Do whatever it needs to happen to get the energy out of your body, but in a way that doesn't hurt anybody in the surrounding area, or any property either, for that matter. So that's kind of what I like to tell people. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what you're feeling ever. And at a certain point in time, you're going to reach a point where you can say to the other person, you know what? I'm feeling really angry right now. And I think I need to stop this conversation because I don't want to, there's some things that are coming up for me and I just don't want to say them. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to head out there. I'm going to, punch the punching bag or something. I'm going to let this out. Then I'll come back and we'll continue the conversation. Is that okay with you? Do you see? I mean, that's not so hard. And you could still do it while you're feeling anger.
Yes. And I guess take that lesson and then we would apply. So then the curveball incidents, who are we and how do we handle the curveball? So the same processes that you are working on, fostering awareness with acceptance and compassion, then with the curveball that happens unexpectedly or expectedly, you've got tools to help learn through that curveball or diffuse the curveball and step back versus getting caught in the, again, you have your ability to sit in it for a moment or whatnot, but because of the awareness piece that you are beginning to work on, when a curveball comes up, instead of responding and acting in the old, well-worn habit pattern way, you can bring on a whole new, you can bring it into a whole new perspective and reframe it from the old, well-worn habit pattern thinking to, wait a minute, maybe it's not nearly as bad as I am thinking that it is, or as it looks or feels. Yes, it's real. I feel this way, but let's reframe this into like you said, a healthy pattern that invites learning and growth, even though it might have been something that was really painful or uncomfortable. There's so much learning and ability in all of that. And I think, I like what we've talked about. So if next week, today, a curveball happens, wow, I get to be who I am instead of, oh my gosh, here I go.
Exactly right. One of the things that I like to tell my clients is, no matter where you are, no matter where you're going, always be gentle with yourself. Always be loving and compassionate. That might not always be easy, especially if you're used to beating yourself up or criticizing yourself. But if you find yourself doing that, criticizing yourself or whatever, just stop for a moment. Actually put your hand up and say, whoa, stop. Yeah. I appreciate that you've got some constructive ideas about how I might show up, but right now I just want to be okay with where I am. You have to actually stop your ego mind from chattering away and making all its judgments. Okay? So don't be afraid to do that. Just pause. Say, oh, I see my ego mind is active right now. It's got this agenda that it wants me to follow through on, and I really don't feel like following that agenda anymore. So it's time for me to have a conversation with my ego mind and say, thank you so much for all the things you do to keep me safe and for bringing my attention to certain things that might be dangerous or risky or even life-threatening. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I don't want you to ever stop doing that. But I'm an adult now, and I have adult powers. I have the capabilities that I didn't have when I was a kid and when I needed your help. So I appreciate your guidance and just pointing out things to me, but I want you to let me make the decisions. That's kind of how I approach my ego mind. And it works. The ego mind says, okay, if you think you're so smart, it'll say something like that. And I said, yeah, I actually do. Thank you. And, I just keep diffusing the negative thoughts that come up. And after a while, it gets active sometimes, right? And I'm not going to say that that never happens, because then I would be a total liar. But it happens less frequently than it used to. And it seems to be happening less frequently as each day goes by. So what it means is that I am becoming more centered and grounded in the truth of who I really am, in that spiritual essence. And I'm able to guide my life from that place much more than I used to when I was in my 40s. Right?
Yeah.
And so now my ego mind has kind of started taking a back seat and is now acting more like a co-pilot or a navigator than the psychopathic guy in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I've approached it, and it's worked well for me. It means doing some deep introspective work, and one of the things that I encourage people is don't be afraid to do that. The truth, even if it's hidden in darkness, is actually where your true gifts lie. That's where you're going to find your ultimate power, is in the dark places where you've kind of hidden away aspects of yourself.
Yeah, beautifully said. That ultimately, it's not the event that shapes us.
Exactly.
It's how we're able to be in that event. And so many of us, myself included, took the event at face value and gave that power over whether or not I was going to have a good experience, a bad experience, be happy, angry, give up. I gave power to the event as to how I was meant to show up, when in fact it's the learning from the event that opens you to shaping yourself from the inside out.
See, that was absolute brilliance. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
That was very, very, no, that really touched me. That was nicely said. I really appreciate that. I think your phone is dinging or something.
Yes, unfortunately, that's I have it connected to my laptop, and I need to work on the technology of releasing the texting from.
Right. But the idea that it's not the event that shapes us, but rather our perception of it, our story about it, our reaction to it, the way we respond. That is absolutely true, because there's just, things happen. Life happens. And I call that the what is. There is what is. And then on top of that, we have all our stories and judgments and everything else about what is. And ultimately, it's the judgments that shape how we believe who we are, rather than the event itself. So it's beautiful. I'm glad you said it the way you did. That was just,
Yeah, I'm
nice.
processing that myself. Yeah, that is pretty. You never know what's going to come out in our discussions. That is, yeah. The one thing I can take away, and our listeners can take away, is it really isn't the event. It's how we grow and learn from that event. So the event doesn't have power to make or break us, even if even if it quote looks and is labeled as event, life shattering. It really isn't. Wow, there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah, and I think about how many times I hear people saying, that situation changed my life, or you changed my life, or this or that changed my life. Well, absolutely, that's 100% true, because every moment,
Mhm.
every single moment, your life is changing. You're changing. You're not the same person you were a millisecond ago. I mean, your true essence probably hasn't changed, but your body changes, all these things. And we tend to identify with our body. We tend to identify with our external circumstances. And all of that is changing 100% of the time. So, okay, great. My life has changed. My life changes even by the most insignificant event that happens in this moment. A leaf falls from the sky and it has an impact on me. A butterfly, you've heard the butterfly effect, right? The butterfly on the other side of the world flaps its wings and everything changes from that moment forward, and I believe that's true because everything is interconnected. It's all tied together. There is no way that one thing can happen in one place that doesn't impact everywhere else. So we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving, constantly growing, constantly breathing, and that's what it is. If you think about it, it's kind of an expansion and a contraction, and an expansion and a contraction. It's like we can't expect things to be growing infinitely without any kind of occasional reduction. It just doesn't work that way. We have to have the expansion and the contraction in order to have balance.
Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful completion of what we've discussed. And then with the energy of learning and growing from the curveballs or whatever, with curiosity, acceptance, and compassion. Those three keys are definitely part of the fabric of learning and growing. How we lovingly look into that event to be. So we're never going to be curveball free. And there's the good news. Don't worry. A curveball will always happen. It just is. But the good news is when that happens, who we've become as a result of having all these curveballs is going to really bring a whole nother level of energy, perspective giving, and healing. Maybe we have all these curveballs because we're meant to, like you, become enlightened and to heal and grow into a whole nother area.
Right. Well, I just want to say that the word enlightened, I think, has a lot of charge for people.
Yeah.
I think that the word enlightened, what it means to me is to grow illuminated, to become more aware. That's what it means to me. I don't think there's a final end state.
Yeah.
Maybe there is, but right in my experience, that's not the case. Enlightenment is more of a process, and it's a cyclical process. I go around, and that's why I have my life mastery paradigm. It is a cycle. I go through, I get my level of awareness up, and then I become more accepting of that. I take a look at who I am in relation to that. I think about my choices and how those choices impact my life going forward. Then I start reconnecting to compassion and forgiveness, and in that order, and look more at my purpose. Then that really brings me back in touch with integrity, which is all about the alignment of thoughts, words, actions, and emotions. And then, of course, that brings me back to shadow, the dark parts of myself that I'm not looking at anymore. And once I'm back into shadow, then I can start looking at my relationships and how the relationships kind of impact me. And finally, we come to flow, which is all about presence in action, being here now, no matter what you happen to be doing. Mm-hmm. That cycle brings you to a new level of enlightenment in your own life. And you can stay there if you want. You can have that level of enlightenment and enjoy it for as long as you like. Or you can choose to move to the next level. And that means just kind of go through that cycle again. And what I try to do for myself and for my clients is be in that cycle in every single moment. Mm-hmm. Right? Always being aware and accepting and thinking about your choices and purpose and all these other pieces, trying to bring those into every interaction as part of your core being. That's kind of what life mastery is about for me. Life mastery, like enlightenment, is not an end state. It's a process. It's a process of learning. It's a process of growing. And so that's why I keep doing these shows. Because every time, I have a conversation with you once a month, and every time something new comes out.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's something that we've said before, but it's in a new way now that strikes me differently. It touches me more deeply.
Yeah. So we're all students learning life, learning from our curveballs, giving that good energy out from us to help others on their journey of when things occur, and not becoming that curveball.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Not becoming the curveball. Well, now that's interesting. Now that you brought that up, that just brings up a whole new conversation for me. Because on some level, I am somebody else's curveball. And if I happen to show up in somebody's life, I may be completely unexpected. I may trigger all kinds of pain or problems or whatever for them to deal with. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. For me, it's just I'm just being who I am. For the other person, it's an opportunity to look at his or her life. So anytime somebody triggers you, and we've talked about triggers, and we've talked about that, you can think about that person as being a kind of a curveball in your life. So now, how am I going to respond to this curveball?
Wow, that's good food for thought. Wow.
Well, speaking of food for thought, it's one of those things that I like to tell people now. It's my brand new bumper sticker wisdom. When life throws curveballs, make lemonade.
Perfect.
I like mixing metaphors sometimes.
Life throws curveballs, make that lemonade. Well,
that's right.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of weighty, beautiful content on our show today. Do you have anything you want to say to wrap it up?
Well, I just want to remind folks that you can watch the recordings of this show and all the other ones that we do on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And this recording will be up there and available later today. So, tell your friends about us. Tell them to come check it out and watch the recordings. And, the more people we get to come out here and interact with us, the better it will be.
Exactly. Well, I've enjoyed learning today and gaining new perspective as always on our show. And I hope that you who are listening live and who will listen to the recording later receive a lot of good nuggets and takeaways to help you on your journey. And please go out and buy the new Wellness Universe book when it comes out in December. I have to say, it's an amazing piece of work with so much in it. And do join the Wellness Universe. It's a great, great place to learn, grow, and connect with fellows who are in the school of life.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. We'll see you next time, and see everybody else next time on Soul Empowerment. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.